Good afternoon, members. It is about time to make a start. We have attained quorum. Members, please. Time to make a start. Welcome to today's panel meeting. Item number 1, confirmation of minutes. So please have a look at the minutes of the special meeting held on January the 6th. As of now, I have received no proposed amendments of, either from members or from the administration. Unless you have any contra views, I take the minutes as confirmed. Thank you. Item number 2, information papers issued since last meeting. After the last meeting, I have received from Ms. Claudia MO a letter on the illegal trading of endangered species in Hong Kong. I've decided to incorporate this into the agenda item on nature conservation policy. Do you agree? Mr. Chen? Yes, I agree, Chairman. But I'm wondering whether we can incorporate the sale of ivory. Yes, indeed, Dr. Elizabeth Court mentioned that we'll so incorporate. Chairman, I'd like more information from the administration. There are some hawker stores under the FEHD where ivory can still be sold. So what sort of administrative arrangement is there? Please let us have all the information. Yes, the Secretary will note this and solicit a response. The other paper is from Mr. CHAN Han-pan. He would like to discuss the marine emission and the problem of air pollution in the coastal area. I've included this under the air quality improvement measures. All right, agreeable? No objection. All right, and item number 3, items for discussion at the next meeting. The administration proposes 2 items. The first one is progress of air quality improvement measures, and that's the item that I just referred to a moment ago. The other one is the producer responsibility scheme on glass beverage bottles. The meeting is scheduled for the 27th of April. An objection? No? All right. Let's move on to item number 4. Shall we invite the administration in, please? Item number 4 is 2015-16 budget-related initiatives of environmental protection. I call upon the administration to brief us on the paper, and then I allow ample time for members to have a go at this item. With us for this item, Mr. Wong Kam Sing, Secretary for Environment, Ms. Christine Low, Under Secretary, Mr. Che Chin Wan, Deputy Director of EPD, Ms. Andrew Lai, Deputy Director EPD, Ms. Amy Yun, Assistant Director, Mr. Wok Wai Chun, Assistant Director. All right, Secretary, will you please brief us on the paper, and then throw the floor open for questions. Chairman, I'm delighted to brief members on the environmental issues in the budget. Improving air quality. In order to improve air quality and to safeguard public health, we have taken a number of measures covering air, sea, and land, as well as the power plant generation, in order to tackle the challenges arising from air pollution. Our air quality is improving from 06 to 14. At the monitoring station, the sulfur dioxide, NOx, and RSP, we have seen a drop of 6, 50, and 20% respectively. In terms of roadside air quality, we will be encouraging and controlling the situation. Before 2009, we will be phasing out 82,000 pre-Euro 4 diesel commercial vehicles. The response has been pretty good. As of February this year, 29% of the eligible vehicles have been scrapped under the scheme. In April, we will bring members up to date on the progress. In April last year, we completed the replacement, one-off subsidy to replace catalytic converters and oxygen sensors of LPG taxis and light buses. We've also used remote sensing equipment to monitor the excessive emissions. As of February this year, 270,000 vehicle counts have been checked and issued about 1,700 emission testing notices to owners. The government will promote zero-emission electric vehicles. The number of EVs has been increasing compared with 2010, where we had less than 100. Now the number has increased to 1,804. The charging points would be important to the promotion of this. We have 1,100 EV chargers in Hong Kong, including over 150 medium and 30 quick chargers in Hong Kong. We will be cooperating with the commercial sector to expand the number. We support the franchise buses to install the catalytic converters in Causeway Bay, Mong Kok, and we will be setting the low emission zones. We will be having a paper reporting members on the latest. As regards vessel emission, compelling ocean-going vessels to use a low sulfur fuel, the bill has been presented to LegCo. If this is enacted, Hong Kong will be the first one to achieve that in the region, and this will improve the air quality in the harbour. In 2015-16, in the budget, we will be extending the port facilities in light duty incentive to 2019, and together with the Economic and Information Commission of Guangdong, we have this cleaner production partnership program, and this will come to an end in March this year, and this has achieved a pretty good effectiveness, and this has gone down well. We have set aside $150 million to extend this for 5 years, and the number of factories taking part will be increasing in number, and we will be improving the cooperation in the PRD region and review the emission reduction results and decide on the way forward. In connection with the water quality of Victoria Harbour, the HATS Victoria Harbour area treatment scheme is one of the largest programs. With the introduction of this, we have seen improvement. HAT Stage 2A, we have completed already. We have a 21 kilometers submarine outfalls, and these will be channeling the sewage to the Stone Cutters Island treatment plant for treatment in order to improve the water quality of the water bodies. In the policy address, we mentioned enhancing the leisure and amenity value of the coastal areas of Victoria Harbour, and there will be coastal areas where we will provide leisure activities. The EPD will be conducting a consultative study to come up with a timetable to improve the coastal area pollution and make improvements there. Chairman, the government is committed to improving the air and water quality. I look forward to the continued support of the Council for the measures in this area. We have a pretty heavy agenda, so I restrict members to 4 minutes, including the question and answers. All right, please indicate your intention to put questions. All right, the list is as follows. Mr. Hon CHAN Han-pan, Frankie Yik, Kenneth Leung, CHAN Han-pan. Mr. Hon CHAN Han, 4 minutes, please. Chairman, thank you. Chairman, I've got 2 questions for the Secretary, if I may. And the first one is the promotion of electric vehicles. Since at the beginning of your term, Mr. Secretary, I put a similar question. what progress have you achieved in taking the lead to use electric vehicles? You talked about a number at that time. Can you tell us the latest number of EVs used by the government fleet, and what is the rate of increase, and so on? That's my first question. Secondly, I noticed that energy saving policies will hinge a lot on the source. If the government can do a lot more at the source level, then I'm sure that the government will achieve pretty good results. My question for the Secretary is this: in terms of infrastructure, transport, housing, and so on, in the days to come, what sort of guidelines or standards that the departments will have to measure up to in terms of energy saving, in terms of the use of solar energy, and so on? Because if we can do something at source, if we lay down all these guidelines and standards at source, then it would make it easier for members to understand whether measures are taken at source when funding is sought.
Secretary, thank you for the question. I have my colleagues answer you later regarding statistics. Regarding energy savings, we're working with the different bureaus and departments in the urban environment regarding housing, construction, transport. How do we save energy at source? Well, in the beginning of this year, we will roll out our initiatives, and we can provide more data later on. Regarding EV statistics, thank you, Chairman. The Bureau policy is that if we have market available models, then the procurement policy is to purchase EV when possible. And as of end of February, we have more than 220 EVs. The majority of them are private vehicles or motorcycles. So this figure, compared to 3-4 years ago, it has already doubled. And as EV has a greater supply, we will continue to procure more EVs. Well, thank you for this positive response. We're happy to hear there's a doubling. In fact, it should be more than double. I recall when you responded initially, it was a double-digit figure. Now we have a significant increase. So in response to my second question, you said that you would provide information in the first half of the year. When do you have an exact date? Well, we're still trying to figure out a specific date. It should be out soon. We will provide a document on air quality, on emission reductions. We will have a blueprint for energy savings at source. We will have this document available very soon. Well, thank you. I hope that it can be a blueprint for future development of all government departments regarding infrastructure. Yik-Jimeng, I have two questions. The government wants to encourage the public to purchase EVs, and there is a waiving of first registration tax. And as of 1st of April, they will only receive tax or waiver when they purchase Euro 6 vehicles. But I searched the internet, there's only one model for heavy trucks on your authorized list. Now, this is a European model, it's an expensive model, and the technology is not openly available. There are a lot of repair and maintenance issues. And now you've reduced maintenance subsidies. So these are important vehicles. So why are you in such a rush? We only have one model, one make available, and isn't that unreasonable? Secretary, well, regarding commercial environmental vehicles, tax incentives. Every year we have a review. And Mr. Yik, you should understand that for all the newly registered vehicles, including commercial vehicles, starting from 2010, they are Euro 5. And as emissions are coming down, we aim to use Euro 6 as a standard for the future. So through the commercially registered environmental vehicles, we want to encourage more owners to purchase Euro 6 environmental friendly vehicles. So as of this year, we have tightened the eligibility criteria. So heavy duty trucks, they need to comply with Euro 6 for them to enjoy tax incentives. So we do refer to market supply. We're not trying to assess a certain make or model or a country. We see that other suppliers in the coming year, they will introduce more Euro 6 models. I am not objecting to your general direction. I'm just saying, are you moving faster than the market? We only have one make and model, Scania, Euro 6. You're now forcing our industry, the workers in the industry, to choose one model, and they have to give up on tax incentives. You need to understand SMEs. I would like you to consider the issue from their perspective, the issue of affordability. These vehicles are so new, repair and maintenance is still problematic. It's not appropriate. Second issue is, in your paper you mentioned the retirement of pre-Euro 4 vehicles. I received questions regarding forklift vehicles. They have a long order period, and there are some 10 companies in this industry. They are only able to take delivery of 40 vehicles per month. So I'm afraid that they can't meet the deadline. Now, why is the situation deteriorating? It's because the government is building a lot of new housing, and there's a lot of infrastructure projects. So if we are to retire the old fleet, and if we want to replace the fleet, they cannot take delivery of vehicles before the deadline. So you are affecting their livelihood. Regarding the diesel, the retiring of pre-Euro 4 diesel fleets, as we mentioned just now, the response is it's quite good. We already have 30% applicants. So we have 4 deadlines for 4 makes, 4 models. We have one for this year, pre-Euro 1, December. There's 18,000 vehicles, and some 10,000, more than 55%, have already been scrapped. So for the remaining, we will issue the vehicle owners with a warning that they need to replace their fleet. We have received these concerns about heavy-duty trucks needs. If you look at the Euro fleet, we have 680 heavy-duty trucks. Less than a third, some 200 have already been scrapped. So for the remaining few hundred, we believe that the owner, as long as they have the intention, they can comply with our time deadline. Just now you said that there are some 700 vehicles, and take away 200, there are some 400 left. Now my understanding is that they can only take delivery of 40 vehicles per month. If we don't have new vehicles, and if you, it might be possible for you to replace the old fleet, but the scenario might occur that they cannot make the deadline. So before the deadline, as long as they can prove that they've placed an order for a new vehicle, can they still receive the tax incentive? Chairman, well, if the industry bodies, if they have any difficulty, they can talk to the environmental department. There is some flexibility in supply. They can increase supplier. I think Mr. Yik, you can speak on behalf of the industry with the Environmental Bureau after the meeting. Mr. Leung Kai-chung, do we have a comprehensive EV macro blueprint? If so, can you give us the details? And if not, tell why don't we have a blueprint? The biggest concern of EV is the charging facility. 3-4 years ago in Paris, parking meters were already providing charging facilities. So in the coming future, will the government provide roadside charging facilities? Do you want the PS to respond? Thank you, Mr. Leung Kai-chung. Our grand scheme, we would like to have EVs with zero emissions to reduce roadside pollution, but it also depends on the pace of technology development. If you look at the last 2-3 years, the EV grew at quite a rapid pace in Hong Kong, from a few hundred in 2010 to 1,800 this year. We have new models, upgrades coming on stream. So we also have policies such as tax incentives, infrastructure, and for new housing, they need to set aside charging facilities. So we want the infrastructure and policies to make it to facilitate the introduction of EV in Hong Kong. Now, just now, Mr. Leung mentioned that the charging stations, we are aware of this technological impediment, and we will consider in installing these charging stations. But the issue is, in Europe, US, and China, and other areas, in the manufacturing countries, they are ramping up EV rollout, but the charging facilities are not catching up. So if we, it's an obstacle to us in providing charging stations. Well, what's the percentage of superchargers in our charging stations? Do we have any guideline? Currently, in our 16 government parking lots, there are 200-300 parking spaces with charging facilities. We have traditional chargers, about 100 are medium chargers. They were installed last summer, and in our government parking spaces, when we install charging facilities, we have to consider the electricity supply, if there's any restriction, and the charging station has some physical space constraints. We don't want to reduce the number of parking spaces. Well, you just mentioned that there are different charging facilities in different countries. Like how does Hong Kong choose the charging facility? Which format do we choose? You might have to reinstall these chargers in 4 or 5 years' time. How do you choose charging facilities? Charging facilities for EVs, there are quite a few. There are different formats. We have a standard facility, 13 amp socket. It's compatible with your domestic facilities. We have medium facilities. It's a 32 amp facility, and it saves some 60% of charging time. And this format we're using is the European format. Why did we choose the European format? Is because whether you're looking at Japanese models or European models, they are compatible. And our understanding is that the mainland is also setting national standards according to European standards. They are similar. But if we take one step further, if we want to use quick charges, for example, if half an hour you can charge 80% of the battery, here we have different standards. And what do we have in Hong Kong? We have the Japanese charging standard, whether in Europe or the US, it's available. So currently, we have quick charges of this format, and of course, in the future, do we need a specific format? Of course, it would be necessary, but we cannot confirm where the majority of EVs will come from. Of course, we need to consider our links with the mainland. Should we comply with the Chinese standards? But simply put, regarding quick charges, we do have different formats, but we're keeping pace with the development of technology. Mr. CHAN Han-pan. Well, according to government statistics, we have a major source of pollution comes from ocean-going vessels, marine vessels. So over the last few years, we have so many vessels berthing in Hong Kong. It has posed a significant impact on residents in Kwai Chung. We have statistics. SO2 is higher in Kwai Chung versus other districts. In the policy address, vessels berthing in Hong Kong, if they use low sulfur fuel, they can receive reduction in port facilities and light dues incentive, and the government will receive 240 million less. So this 240 million, why can't we use it to build infrastructure? Why should we subsidize ocean-going vessels? Now, even though it's low sulfur marine fuel, there's still SO2 emissions. So why can't we provide better facilities? For example, in Kaohsiung, Taiwan, they can use the electric facilities that can alleviate the problem. Residents in Kwai Chung don't have to suffer. So could you tell us, why do we have to forego the 240 million?
Undersecretary, Chairman, if we have to install the onshore power supply, the amount of money will not be sufficient. We've conducted some studies on onshore power supply, and in the near future we're going to be coming here to the Council to explain to members all the technical and the costing side of the issues. We have noticed a new development whereby there is technology that can be used in place of the onshore power supply. This technology is increasingly adopted by the ocean liners. Now, if you use the onshore power supply, then it would be zero emission, but the ocean liners may not find this most effective. You have to have the cooperation of the port operators as well as the ocean liners themselves. Mr. Chen, Undersecretary, you said that you will come here to the Council about the onshore power supply. Will you tell us the way forward? How far down the road are we going to use onshore power supply, or the technology that you referred to? I think you will set the mind of the Kwai Chung residents at ease, because we are going to have $240 million forgone. Undersecretary? Well, we said that at the new cruise terminal we will try the onshore power supply, but the honourable member is talking about the entire Kwai Chung. If this is going to be done, this will represent a massive investment. We do have a new technology like the scrubbers. In Europe and America, there are ocean liners that have installed the scrubbers. So when we come to the Council, we will explain to members the details. Mr. Chen, how soon are you going to come before us? Well, I think I have to work it out with the Chairman. Mr. Chen, the Undersecretary is talking about the ocean terminal. the cruise terminal, you are referring to the container terminal. Yes, indeed, I'm talking about the container terminal. So you are coming to us to talk about the container terminal or the cruise terminal? Yes, the cruise terminal. But you can say that for new technology, it is applicable to the cruise terminal as well as the container terminal. The government never said that there would be onshore power supply at Kwai Chung terminal. Mr. Chan, I think you have written to me to talk about the pollution arising from the OGVs in Kwai Chung. We will be talking about their pollution measures. You might wish to follow up on this next time, or you might wish to put an oral question at the Council. Mr. Chen. Well, the cruise terminal, we have only a couple of vessels per year, but in Kwai Chung we have loads of vessels berthing. You're not doing anything about it. You're really putting the cart before the horse. Mr. Mok? Now, the world over, what sort of vessels will be using the onshore power supply? It is the passenger vessels that are using this, not so much the container vessels. Now, even for the cruise liners, and all of them can use the onshore power supply. It's not simply a question of whether we provide the power source for them. They have to have the facilities that they can use the facilities. That container vessels, for instance, generally very few of them can take advantage of the onshore power supply. Now, if members are concerned about the air pollution arising from the container terminal, the fuel switch measures will certainly be able to help. We can discuss this later on. Right? Unless members have any further questions, I'd like to use my 4 minutes. Mr. Kenneth Leung put a question as to whether we have any blueprint regarding the promotion of electric vehicles. I don't think you have addressed the question direct. In Beijing, in European and American cities, they have certain targets to measure up to by such and such a time, but in Hong Kong, we don't seem to have this particular target. So my question for the Secretary is, do you have this kind of target as well in other jurisdictions other than tax incentives? The government would offer subsidies to users of electrical vehicles, and that would incentivize people to use them. With an EV, it is slightly more expensive than their petrol counterparts of the same grade. I think there ought to be more subsidies. Furthermore, as far as the EPD is concerned, you are promoting or taking the lead. But over the past 7 or 6 or 7 years, we have procured half a dozen or so electric vehicles. So for the EPD and ENB, you have a couple of electric vehicles. How many electric vehicles are you currently using in your fleet? Director. Let me take the questions in reverse order. EPD and ENB, we do have the obligation to take the lead in the promotion of electric vehicles. So the 3 top officials, the Secretary, Under-Secretary, and the Director, they are using electric vehicles themselves. As to whether we have more on our fleet, I don't have the information with me for the time being. I can send supplementary information after the meeting. Chairman, you talked about the target regarding EVs. The Secretary can supplement in just a moment. But I'd like to say that we do have 2 categories. One is public transport, the other one is private vehicles. For the EPD, we put a lot of emphasis on public transport. Now we have the Green Transport Pilot Fund encouraging the use or the procurement of electric vehicles by the bus operators, and that's for the public transport. As regards private vehicles, now the EPD certainly would encourage the members of the public to use public transport more and leave their cars at home. If they want to procure private vehicles, we encourage them to buy electric vehicles and offer them some tax incentive. Chairman, our public transport represents the backbone of our transportation system, and we subsidize the bus operators to buy new buses. In the mainland of China, as far as I understand, they are not merely talking about electric vehicles, they're talking about the new energy vehicles. Our buildings are reached by child in Hong Kong and narrows the street. We emphasize a lot the zero emission, and we're taking measures to support vehicles zero emission vehicles. The supply of these vehicles to Hong Kong is limited, and the technology is improving by leaps and bounds, and we are paying attention to the development. All right. Mr. Tony J. Chairman, very simply, I'd like to follow up on your question, Mr. Chairman, the electric vehicles. We have been promoting this for some time now. The percentage looks pretty good, but the actual figures don't. We have 1,100 chargers, 150 medium chargers, and 30 quick chargers. Now, this is going to be important, the charging facilities. Does the government have any target to increase the number of chargers in Hong Kong? There are some public car parks, Chairman, we don't have that many electric vehicles, and they have a lot of chargers in these public car parks. When I am driving into the car park, should I put my car there? I mean, if I'm not using an electric vehicle. So I think it would be a good idea for more chargers to be provided, especially the quick chargers. Now, in some places we don't have enough parking spaces. Can we have any particular priority given to electric vehicles? Deputy Director. Chairman, thank you. Yes, about the use of chargers at public car parks, from our understanding from the Transport Department, if the car park is not full, then the spaces with parking with chargers will be blocked off, will be reserved. But if the car park is getting full and there are no electric vehicles coming in, then they will try to maximize the resources inside the car park, and they will open up these unused parking spaces for other vehicles to use. Now, as regards the development of further charging facilities, in fact, we do have a new measure. We have 150 medium chargers installed in government car parks. As EVs are adopted more and more, we will be conducting a review together with the EMSD to see how we should take this forward. In the near future, it is one of our measures to increase the number of chargers. Mr. Tony J. Chairman, if I may follow up on the Cleaner Production Partnership Program, this is costing $150 million. Will the Secretary talk to the FS about conducting some studies on green building? and also the ancillary facilities for electric vehicles. Can there be more in the way of tax incentives for this to happen? I understand that when we first started with electric vehicles, there were some universities that conducted the studies. The FS is setting great store by the R&D in Hong Kong and subsidies for these exercises. Thank you very much, and I've taken note of members' comments. Mr. Chen Han-pan? Chairman, thank you. By 2015, we're going to have 500,000 vehicles in Hong Kong, and the EV increase will be less than 1%. Will you have a 5-year target like other countries? Now, in New York, in 2020, 1/3 of the taxi fleet would be converted into electric. Will you have a similarly bold program? Second, if you want to encourage the adoption of EVs, it doesn't make sense just to install the quick chargers in public car parks. We have to make sure that in private buildings, quick chargers will also be installed. You have to talk to the MACs and OCs.
New buildings will have facilities, but the majority of buildings don't have charging facilities. In our estate, if we were to build a charging facility in your parking space, it can range from 30,000 to 90,000 because you have to install wiring and a box from your unit. It does take tens of thousands. So if the whole Hong Kong faces this issue, will you have any solution for housing estates? You might need to subsidize. For example, if you have 100 parking spaces in the estates, can you install some fast charging units for them for free? The electricity supply, charging facility supply will accelerate the rollout of EVs. What's your view on this? Thank you, Mr. Chan. We had said that, first of all, the rollout of EV is focused on public transport, buses, taxis. That will be our main focus. Hong Kong is different from New York. We have LPG and petrol taxis and diesel. It's better than diesel. So our policy now is to help is to subsidize the bus companies to achieve a zero emission. And this is the major technology obstacle, because buses have to go uphill, they need air conditioning. We do have measures to assist taxis, the taxi industry in Hong Kong. It's very fast-paced, so we need to work with the industry to support the rollout of EV taxis. In private housing estates, how do we support older estates? The electricity supply might not be able to cope with charging facilities. It also costs tens of thousands. It might range from 30,000 to 90,000. So your suggestion of providing charging facilities for estates might not be feasible. If a vehicle is parked overnight, it might not be efficient. In our green building, we require all new housing estates to be EV enabled. They can install these chargers. For existing estates, We have an EMSD hotline where they can provide technical support. But we do have a change in the financing policy. The first registration tax, we have policy incentives for EVs. We will gauge the response and see what we can do to promote EV. Yik I'd like to follow up on infrastructure. The estate I live in has 300 parking spaces, but they can only provide 20 charges. So if the 21st vehicle comes along, then they need to install separate wiring. So I want to ask the government, in the long run, as the Secretary said, the green building has requirements. So in the future housing, do they have a socket available? That would be good. Otherwise, it's something you need to deal with. For existing estates, they cannot afford installing separate wiring. It's too expensive. It's too prohibitive. In the new construction, they need to have the capacity to be EV enabled. But you are correct. For old buildings, old estates, they might only be able to provide 10%. And if EVs were to be promoted in Hong Kong, that is an obstacle we need to overcome. We do have some time to deal with this issue, but I cannot provide you with an immediate solution. So when we observe the trends, we need to put our heads together and resolve this. Well, you don't have to answer immediately. You can provide information later. The EPD has already sent out 1,700 warnings, and they need to conduct further tests within a certain time frame. So do you have information regarding these vehicles that need to comply? Do you have the make and model? How many involve a catalytic converter? How many are involved with taxis? How many? And we have 130 vehicles whose licenses were suspended. Do you have information on that? Well, Mr. Yik raised two questions. The charging facilities in private estates. So whether it's the owners' incorporation or the government, we need to consider that the owners who own a parking space and they wish to purchase an EV, now if they sell their unit, will the next owner continue to need these facilities? So the considerations are numerous aside from electricity supply. The market responds very quickly. We are aware there's a company now that can install charging facilities in private estates. The business model is very attractive. The estate or the owners incorporated, they don't need to make payments immediately. They will install the facilities, and then for all the future users, it's like using broadband. They can charge according to usage. So this company is already in talks with some 10-20 estates. And regarding remote sensing statistics, we issued 1,700 letters. We can give you the breakdown. Almost half are private vehicles. If you're referring to minibuses and taxis, they make up a small percentage. We can provide detailed information after the meeting. You can hand it to the whole panel. Mr. Lai said there's a company, I'm aware of that company, but as member of the Owners Incorporated, we do have some reservations, but just to show your support, we agree. Well, they have some liabilities. They are creating a profit opportunity for a third party. Okay, we'll conclude this item. We'll move on to item number 5, setting up a low emission zone, the progress on LEZs. Perhaps the Undersecretary can take us through the paper. Well, I wasn't going to go into this in depth because during the policy address, a lot of questions were asked. Members asked, and they wanted detailed statistics, such as which bus company, what were the statistics on their fleet conversion. Well, the paper deals with that, and I'm aware that the public feels that it's been late. The original plan was to have LEZs available for franchise buses by the end of the year. But now, some vehicles can only take advantage of this in the beginning of 2016. Well, it's not a big difference. If you refer to the statistics in the paper, you'll see where the difference is, and I welcome members' questions. Okay, please indicate if you wish to speak. Wong Kok Hing, Leung Kok Chung, 4 minutes each. Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for the figures. In the LEZs, the buses, the number of buses, even though the number of buses are increasing, but have you seen another issue that is from the environmental perspective? A lot of cross-harbor buses, the bus fare is higher than other bus routes of similar length that don't cross the harbor. So I've done some studies and found that 70% of cross-harbor buses are more expensive than similar bus routes that don't cross the harbor. It's significantly more expensive, and therefore passengers won't take them because we found that the price difference can range from 1% to 68%, and the absolute terms are more expensive by 10 cents to $6.80. So we see that these are new environmental buses. We see they are empty, it's a waste, and even a bus driver told me a few years ago that you should speak to the government, it's a waste. They feel that driving, it's an empty, since we have passengers, why can't we charge them less? The bus is running on the road anyway, it's better than running empty. Well, this is a matter of it's an environmental issue. It's also a matter of economics and passenger choice. Now, why have I waited till now to bring this issue up? It's because I would like the Undersecretary to talk to Transport Housing Bureau. They shouldn't look at it from an isolated perspective. THB looks at it from finance perspective, and the Environmental Bureau looks at it from an environmental perspective. Well, it's not related to LEZ. It's still an environmental issue. So how can buses utilize their resources? Well, from the environment perspective, we have not looked at this issue. We've heard your view, and we can liaise with THB. So I apologize for not having the information to answer your question. I'm not sure if my colleagues have any supplementary information. Mr. Lai? Well, as Undersecretary said, franchise bus pricing we need to talk with the THB. But I agree with Mr. Wong Kok-king in that, from the environment perspective, if we can have less buses on the road, less traffic, that will improve the roadside air quality. So, regarding the review of bus routes, we're talking with the THB in earnest. Well, I'd like to send you a copy of my report to the Environment Bureau. The environment perspective I'm referring to is empty buses that don't. I'm referring to empty buses that do not accept passengers because of prohibitive bus fares. So the Environment Bureau should promote the use of these buses by charging less or subsidizing them. Leung Kai-cheung, the 3 LEZs, it's puzzling. The so-called LEZ in Causeway Bay, it's just one street, it's not a district. So my feeling is that it doesn't live up to its name. I have two questions. The LEZ you're promoting, you're trying to restrict a certain type of public bus, so why can't you consider the LEZ, could we set air quality standards rather than restricting certain vehicles from using or not using this zone? So should you just look at buses? What about other vehicles? Why can't you look at an emission level as a standard? Because I feel if in these one or two streets, if it's necessary to restrict emissions, why can't you expand the area such that it really does become a zone?
Undersecretary, I go along with Mr. Leung partially. I mean, in the internal discussion, I find the Chinese term for zone strikes people as a larger area than it is. Now we're talking about the low emission route for the franchised buses. In the entire route from the beginning to the end, we're referring to a certain section of the route. Now, the word zone may give rise to the question as to why we are prohibiting other vehicles from using that particular road. From the EPD's point of view, the control of emission would be effective in that particular section for franchised buses. Now, the member also asked whether we are banning other vehicles from that particular zone. Now, these are really small areas. If we have to ban certain vehicles from a particular area, then I don't think we can do it simply from the point of view of emission. In London and Singapore, they have the low emission zones. They have the electronic road pricing to monitor the kind of vehicles that are driving in, and they are slapping a charge on these vehicles in order to reduce the number. So I don't think emission alone will not be quite enough. If you look at the situation in Singapore and London, the policies are much broader. If in Hong Kong we want to have larger low emission zones, we will need to talk with the THB. Now, the TAC has indeed talked about the electronic road pricing system and see whether these can be introduced into Hong Kong. That would represent a broader issue. Mr. Leung. Chairman, if we are to improve the air quality in Hong Kong, then it would be a good idea, and that should be the long-term objective. I think the different bureaus can have more joined-up thinking, come up with broader plans under Secretary. What we do, there have been some discussions about the pedestrianized zones or the zones where we allow less traffic, and that would cut across different bureaus. We don't have any new measures for the time being to bring to members for the time being. Mr. Tam Yu-jung. Chairman, the low emission zone is a step in the right direction, but when this is designed by the administration, it is not the same as what we have in mind. We did have a higher expectation. Now we're talking about a certain section of the roads that would become low emission zones, and we are restricting the franchised buses only. I think something is better than nothing, although these fall short of our expectation. I think at the end of the day, we have to do something about the buses that of older models, and they are belching out more emissions, and they should be retired as soon as possible to be replaced by newer models. I heard that in 2016, I think the Secretary talked about 2016, that the high emission buses will be resolved. Can you be more specific with regard to these franchised buses? How are we going to achieve our objective? And how are we going to do that? Do you have any specific time frame so that we know when, or more exactly about the effectiveness of the low emission zone? Mr. Lai. Chairman, thank you. Thank you very much to Mr. Tam for the question. Well, the designation of low-emission zones for franchise buses is one of the means to improve roadside air quality. This is not the only means. Like Mr. Tam and Mr. Leung said, other than doing something about the bus routes that are going through the congested areas where we designate low-emission zones, we do have other measures. We have a subsidy program for Euro 3 or pre-Euro 3 diesel vehicles that will be scrapped before 2020. The first line is the deadline for pre-Euro. The deadline is 2016. So Mr. Tam is actually referred to the deadline for the commercial diesel vehicles. They would contribute to better, the scrapping of them would contribute to better air quality on the roadside. And the replacement of the catalytic converter would help. We have the remote sensing device to spot all the non-compliant vehicles. Now, with all these measures in place, we hope that the roadside air quality would be improved. Now, for the low emission zones, we may be talking about 3 streets in 3 different districts. The effectiveness would be greater than the 3 streets. Now, because we are talking about 130 bus routes applying these particular roads, 44 routes are cross-harbor routes. Let's say 170, it starts from Sha Tin MTR all the way to Wafu Estate. So these low emission zone will certainly be improving the air quality in these areas. Mr. Tam? No? Dr. Lo Wai Kwok? Chairman, thank you. Now, these low emission zones, I think the locations are appropriate because honestly, the traffic flow and the pedestrian flow are pretty high in these areas. And I'm sure you have a lot of statistics to show that the air quality leaves a lot to be desired in these areas. As whether we can or should ban other vehicles from these zones, from a practical point of view, I think these should be done at a later stage. Now, for commercial vehicles, if they do need to use these particular areas, the best solution, of course, lies with the upgrading of the emission of these commercial vehicles, and it would be good, it would be best for them to be low emission or zero emission wherever they go. But from what I heard, there are so many bus routes that are applying these zones. So if we have to restrict these zones to only low emission buses, certainly would be good for the zones and the other areas as well. Now, from the information, take KMB for instance, there are 3,800 vehicles, 956 are only low emission, or 25%. City bus, the percentage is higher, 900 or so buses on the fleet, 58% are low emission. As the New World First bus, they have 700 or so buses, low emission, only 28%, similar to that of the KMB. Now, what we are concerned is that the low emission buses are increasing in number, but if we can increase the number, then it would certainly bring about an improvement in air quality in all the areas that the buses go through. Under Secretary, there are 2 points I'd like to make, if I may. Mr. Lai referred to the whole series of measures. Now, for diesel vehicles, by the end of 2019, we will only have Euro 4 commercial vehicles and above. There may be some franchised buses, but they have all retrofitted with the catalytic reduction devices, or SCR, and they will be upgraded in terms of emission performance comparable to Euro 4 or above. So in terms of performance, all these vehicles will be on the same power as Euro 4, and that's not really bad at all. In other words, in Hong Kong, we have these commercial vehicles that are Euro 4, and we have the emission at that particular level. There may still be some franchised buses that do not measure up, and how we're going to deal with that. Now, why do we not require them to replace them altogether? My colleague can explain a little bit. We do need to have 2 years of serviceable life before we would retrofit with SCR. Now, for these buses, most of them are double-decker buses, we don't have zero-emission technology for the buses to be replaced. Now, when the buses are 18 years old, when they are retired, what sort of technology are we going to be adopting? Now, we are liaising with the THB, welcome comments and input from the trade. What is the transitional arrangement going to be like? I must admit that we don't have any conclusion, but this is an important issue. I must admit, my colleague might wish to supplement. Deputy Director, like Dr. Low and Mr. Tam said, if we can upgrade the emission performance of the bus fleet, it would certainly be best. Now, for the 5,000 or so franchise buses, under the agreement, they will be on the road for 18 months in the coming couple of years, and that would be the peak period for replacement from 2015. For 3 years after that, there will be a lot of Euro 5 buses that will be on the road. Now, for Euro 2, Euro 3 buses, there's still a couple of years to go. We're going to have 1,400 Euro 2, Euro 3 buses, the most cost-effective way is to retrofit them with SCR to upgrade the performance to Euro 4. And there are new technologies available, like the hybrid buses, electric buses. We are fully subsidizing the pilot. Mr. Tony J, Chairman, of course, we are concerned about the issue with the introduction of the low emission zones. And as we said, if the emission of these buses do not improve, then the situation will not improve much. You may deploy the buses, the good buses, to the low emission zones, but the buses with higher emission will be redeployed to other districts. So the problem in other districts would be worse, because you're shifting the problem from here to elsewhere. You said you have interim measures. Now the replacement is one of them. If we can get on with the interim measures, it would be good, because they will yield tangible results to make improvements. My question is, in para 2, you mentioned the fact that the public buses take up 40% of the traffic, and they contribute 80% and 40% of NOx and RSP. Now, with the introduction of the low emission zones, I understand that NOx will improve because they contribute 80%. For particulate, it is only 40%. Certainly, there would be other measures that I hope will be adopted to mitigate this. Other than franchise buses, there may also be large coaches that are belching out a lot of emissions as well. So should something be done about them as well? Members talked about the taxis and others, and they're more concerned about this. But many times the large coaches are just as guilty of emissions, and I think this is one of the sources that have to be dealt with as well.
Aside from what was mentioned, that is, Euro 1 fleet will be replaced, do you have any other interim measures? Mr. Lyon, Mr. Mock. Thank you, Chairman. We have identified 3 sites for franchise buses because in these 3 busy areas, franchise buses take up a large percentage of traffic. In Causeway Bay, buses can make up 40%. Even in Central and Nathan Road, they only make up 20-30%. So if we want to improve the traffic there, then we need to enhance the emission standards. But as Mr. Jie Wai-chun mentioned, buses don't monopolize the roads. There are other vehicles. So according to our traffic flow studies, right next to buses are taxis, and they make up 30-40% in these 3 areas. So one of our measures, which we completed last year, is to subsidize the taxis and minibuses to convert their catalytic converters to bring down NOx levels. We'll also use our remote sensing technology for all taxis and minibuses or petrol vehicles. If they exceed the emission levels, we will issue them with an inspection letter. So this will be a long-standing measure. So whether it's private vehicles or commercial vehicles, the vehicle owners should pay more attention to repair and maintenance to bring down emissions. Well, we mentioned franchise buses. They need to comply with emission standards, so they have lower emissions. So when we enter talks with franchise bus companies, can they can you redesign their routes such that the particulates are not concentrated in one area? Could they run in more open spaces to bring emissions to more acceptable levels? A simple response. We understand Mr. Jie's idea. The bus companies, when they comply with LEZs, they're not deploying all their low-emission vehicles to these areas. New buses might have to run the airport route. They might have to serve people with disabilities. So they need to serve other areas. They won't be deploying all low-emission vehicles to the LEZs. I'll use my 4 minutes to raise a few questions. The Undersecretary, I see that the LEZ is not necessarily what we imagined, a low-emission area. For example, in Causeway Bay, from Haisan Plaza, that's not an area, it's just a street, and you limit bus emissions. They have to run in a low-emission street. That's not a LE zone. So we have some concerns regarding volume. How effective will it be? And second, regarding the quality, if you look at the New World Bus Company and New World First Bus and City Bus, they've spent 5 to 6 years on this plan. So why haven't you been able to persuade the buses to use low-emission buses or to upgrade their fleet? Or is it, as your paper says, that you're waiting for the MTR lines to come on stream? Then we'll have less buses, we'll have less emissions? Well, that sounds passive. So the LEZ should be an initiative to reduce emissions. Why can't you come up with something more proactive? Mr. Lai, in the last few years, we have been in talks with the 3 bus companies to implement a low-emission zone. KMB told us that they have no problem in complying by the end of the year. City Bus and New World First Bus, they have some issues that they need to overcome. For example, rerouting the bus routes due to Island East, Island South line, MTR line coming on stream. We also have low platform buses that is convenient for people with disabilities. So they cannot deploy all low emission vehicles to the LEZs. So they have difficulty in complying by the end of the year. But last year, when we were in talks with them, NWFB and City Bus had installed the SCR in 100-odd buses. So New World First Bus says that they can be compliant by the end of the year. City Bus still has a shortfall of 7%, but as they take delivery of the new fleet next year, so by first quarter of next year, they can meet LEZ requirements. Well, City Bus is still 7% short. What is the impact on the efficacy of LEZ? Well, the impact is minimal because the 2,000-odd buses running in LEZ, if 90% are low-emission vehicles, then they should have a significant impact. What about the overall impact? If all buses comply, let's say Causeway Central, Causeway Bay Central, and Mongkok, how much can you, by what factor can air quality improve? Well, if franchise buses make up 20 to 40% of traffic, and if NOx emissions are high, we feel that NOx can be reduced by up to 80%. if we have no more questions, let's conclude this item. We now move on to item 6, Public Works. You should take note that this is Yuen Long Kam Tin Sewage Treatment Works Improvement Project. It is Sun Wai Sewage Treatment and Yuen Long Kam Tin Sewage Treatment Plan. Similarly, the government will take us through the paper, and then members can ask questions. I would like to remind you, this item, if it needs to come to a vote, then any direct or indirect fiduciary interests will need to be disclosed according to rules of procedure. So, who will be taking us through this? Mr. Zhao from DSD. We also have from DSD Chief Engineer Mr. Anthony Zhang. Mr. Zhao? Well, Mr. Zhang will take us through the paper. Chief Engineer Mr. Anthony Zhang. Thank you, Chairman. I turn on the PowerPoint. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to take you through the Sun Wai Sewage Treatment Works, including upgrading the current treatment center. The PowerPoint shows you this diagram, map, the red block. That is the sewage treatment center built in 1993, and they're serving the NT West area, including Yuen Long, Tin Shui Wai, and Hong Shui Kiu. The treatment facility can handle 164,000 cubic liters. Now, why do we need this improvement works? Well, as I said just now, the current treatment capacity is 164,000 cubic liters per day, and according to our 2020 forecast, it will reach capacity by 2020. If we don't enhance capacity, we cannot serve the catchment area and meet population growth. So we suggest increasing 164,000 cubic meters to 200,000 cubic meters. I mentioned just now these are preliminary treatment facilities. We want to enhance that to chemically enhanced primary treatment with disinfection facilities. Now, this sewage treatment center, we will also have some green measures, environment measures to enhance the nearby landscape quality. So what you see in this diagram is the architect's design. This is the computer simulation. You'll see the existing treatment center when phase 1 is complete and come on stream. The old treatment center will cease operations. You'll see that the surrounding area are container park areas, so E. coli can be brought down by 99.9%. So sewage discharge or sludge discharged will be reduced significantly. The sludge will be treated in a sludge treatment center. We can reduce it by 140 metric tons per day. Odor reduction facilities will also be in place. We have advanced odor treatment facilities before emissions are discharged. We also have odor detecting facilities. to ensure that there will be minimal impact to the public during operations. We'll start work in the middle of the year, and by the beginning of 2020 we want the treatment center to come on stream. So the bill will come to 2.4 billion. We have consulted with the Ha-Chun Rural Committee, and basically we have their support. Regarding the engineering efficiency, we have incorporated long-term development forecasts. Will enhance the water quality, will create 400 job opportunities, and that would conclude my introduction, and we welcome any questions. Mr. Lo Wai Kok. Thank you, Chairman. This project increases the capacity of sewage treatment, and they're adopting new technology, so it should bring about improvement. For example, odor control. It should be better than the old facility, so I support this project. But I want to ask that the existing treatment scheme, right next to it you'll be building a new treatment center, and the new treatment center will handle the sewage. The old facility will cease operations and it will be scrapped. So do we have new uses for this land? Will there be other environmental measures set aside for this area? Could you answer this first? Thank you.
Mr. Chow, Assistant Director, please. Thanks very much, Dr. Low, for the question. Once the new plant is up and running, we will decommission the existing one. There are two parts, two stages to this project. The new plant represents one of the phases. In Hon Kiu new development area, it is still on the drawing board, and we anticipate that the load and the population will increase. We will keep the existing site. The 1 hectare site will be kept for the to cater for the population and sewage increase in the Hon Kiu new development area. Dr. Low, so with the demolition of the old one, you are in the first stage of the work, and the existing site will become the site for the second stage, where there will be new facilities. Do you have any plan, any time frame regarding that new site? The Hon Kiu NDA is still under planning. The timetable hasn't quite been finalized yet. We will monitor the situation and the progress and tie in with the Phase 2 program. Dr. Low, if I may, Chairman, you may not have any specific timing for the development. With the site being available, will this be large enough for the Phase 2 development? Yes, indeed, that would be enough. Any further questions? Mr. Tam Yu-jong. Chairman, my question is not directly related to this paper. I understand that we have quite a lot of sewage treatment facilities being built in Xiaohuihui. We granted funding last Friday, and Tuen Mun, the funding hasn't been granted yet. Here we have another one. Is it because of the population increase, or is it because of the larger demand that causes you to build more facilities? Will there be more of the same going forward, and how many more are we talking about? Yes, please. Madam Yun, Assistant Director. Thank you. Mr. Tam referred to the one in Tuen Mun. That is not an expansion of the sewage facility. So this year we have the Shaohui sewage treatment facility, and that's to cater for the NENT development. In Yunlong at the EA panel, we did talk about this. That is for the design. There will be works for the Yunlong sewage treatment facilities. This is the last one for this year, the Sunwai one. That's for Tin Shui Wai, Sunwai, and Yunlong to cater for the population increase. So we are merely catering for the development in the districts, and the one in Shaohui is the same. Couple of years down the road, they will be hitting capacity. So that's why we have to get on with the project to cater for the increase in demand generated by population increase. Mr. Tam Yu-jong, Chairman, now when you get on with these projects, you have to anticipate the population changes in the coming decade, and you have to have land available. They will be brought in phases, and you will need to expand the facilities with more land being available. You don't have to relocate them, and you don't have to go to that much expenditure. Ms. Yun, Chairman, if there is surplus site, we will use the site appropriately. It is difficult to find sites. The one in Sunwai, we are talking about 1 hectare of land. Other than increasing the capacity, we have to improve the facilities as well. Now, the new site is 2.7 hectares. We will try to maximize the site that we have available to us to cater for the demand. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, second round. Simple follow-up, if I may. In this new stage of treatment works, what will be the discharge situation like? Or where will the sewage be discharged into? Mr. Chow, Chairman, thank you. Sunwise Stage 1, the discharge will be the same as now. There will be a 9-kilometer submarine outfall. This will take the sewage into the sea. If I may refer you to this map here, the darker line there on the map. Dr. Lo, once the new plant becomes or is commissioned, will there be any improvement in the water quality? Yes, indeed, there will be improvement in the water quality. All right, any further questions? We have to refer this to the PWSC for consideration. So my question is, do all agree that we refer this to the PWSC? Any declaration of interest from members? No? All right, then we endorse this agenda item. Item 7, any other business? I don't have any AOB item. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, officials and colleagues, for coming. Thank you.